couple of things before I introduce, segue into introducing Kyle. I actually met Kyle at Andy Crestadina's event, which is Wine and Web, which is like any good marketer. I totally ripped off his idea and brought it to Madison and started craft marketing. We're in Wisconsin, so we need to drink beer. But Kyle is a guy I met networking down there, and Windbound needed some help with our Google Analytics, and Kyle does some amazing work with Google Analytics. And if he could help me understand Google Analytics, he can help anybody. The simplifier, they call him.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to shut up now and let Kyle get going on this. But Kyle, thanks so much for presenting to us today. And thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Greg, Tony, AMA, and thanks everybody for giving me a little bit of your afternoon. So thanks everybody. Today, we're going to talk about Google Analytics Simplified. I want to try to help you quickly find strategic answers that you need. And this is kind of geared towards people who you're not analytics experts. You don't want to be. You don't spend a ton of time in analytics, but you want to be a little more data driven. So, maybe the little more beginner to intermediate level is kind of what we're going for today. And I want to give you a little framework for how to navigate Google Analytics a little better. But first, I just want to go back a year. It's been a crazy year, obviously, with COVID and everything. And one of the things that I know a lot of people did was try to do something new and exciting. People took up baking. They learned how to play an instrument. They, binged watched everything on Netflix. Well, I kind of took a different approach. What I did was I wanted to see how long I could grow my hair out. Mostly that was a safety issue because I didn't want to go to a barber shop. Now Greg has seen these, there's a ton of pictures, but this is me normally. And this is where I ended up by the time I finally got my hair cut. That was about 5 months for me. Now there's even more pictures that are I don't know if I'd say cringeworthy, but humorous. But this was one that I thought I would share. But all jokes aside, let's dive into a little bit of analytics. So I want to start by framing this with just some common pain points that I'm sure many of you can relate to. So one of those is, I hear this a lot, Google Analytics is really complex. I don't know where to start. I totally get that. And that's a very, very common issue. The other one that I get a lot is, I don't have time to look at my data. The rest of that is, I'm creating content, I'm creating social media posts, I'm doing graphic design. I don't have time to look at this. So I'm going to try to address these pain points for you a little bit. So when you do go into analytics, you'll be able to find stuff. So with that, today's goals are twofold, basically, just get you a little more comfortable with using Google Analytics. And then I want to try to simplify it, as much as possible in an hour so you can find what you need quickly. So some of the things we're going to be covering, we're going to talk about some business questions that you can answer with Google Analytics. We're going to see how the data is organized. So we're going to learn our ABCs. I'm going to give you 5 reports to get started with that every marketer can use. We're going to talk about using segments to find specific insights. And then I'm going to show you how to save your key reports all in one place. Okay, why isn't it advancing? Hold on. Okay, my thing locked up. Technical, oh, there we go. Okay, gotta go over here. So what is Google Analytics at a very high level? Is a free tool that generates detailed statistics about everything happening on your website. It is installed on roughly 30 to 50 million websites. around the world. But really, well, it's just a tool that helps you answer your business questions. And this is going to be a theme I keep coming back to, because this is hopefully going to help you use it better. So why do I need Google Analytics? As a marketer, it can be super useful because it can show you how your website is performing. It can tell you how your marketing is performing. And if you're a content creator and you're publishing a lot of blog posts, videos, that kind of thing, it can help you figure out how your content is performing. So questions that the tool can help us answer, at a very high level, it's kind of the journalism questions. If you ever got a degree in journalism, who, what, where, when, how. But we're framing it in the sense of digital marketing. So who's visiting my website? Where did they come from? When did they arrive? And how is our website performing? Another way, a great way to think about Google Analytics is related to your car dashboard. So when you're driving, one of the things that helps you, understand how the car is performing is your dashboard. So in the same way, Google Analytics can help you figure out how your website and how your marketing is performing. Is there anything broken? Are there warning lights? Are there things that need to be addressed? So that's what Google Analytics is for, really. And because if you're not measuring anything, if you're not using any kind of tool to figure out, how everything is working, then basically you're just kind of like this guy. You're just throwing darts blindfolded at a dartboard. And, maybe you'll hit the bullseye occasionally, but more often than not, you won't. So I'm going to talk quickly about setting up Google Analytics. We're not going to get too technical with this, but I know some people might be new to this. So you just go to google.com/analytics. You need to fill out a couple forms to set up your account, check some boxes, give it a name of your account. And then this is kind of the important part. They give you a snippet of code and a tracking ID. And then that code is basically what's going to go on every page of your website that you want to track. So we take that snippet of code. It's a JavaScript code. It goes on every page that you want to track. You can implement it in a couple different ways. You can use Google Tag Manager. If you're on a WordPress site, you can use there's a lot of great plugins that will push the code to your site, or you can just have your web developer do it if you want to hard code it on your site. Now, this code is what helps collect visitor data and then sends it to Google's servers. So here's a great picture from Andy and the Orbit Media team. So just kind of how it works. So on the left here, you've got cookies. Whenever you visit a website, your device gets cookied, and then that talks with the JavaScript on the website. And then that sends data over to Google servers, and then Google packages it up nicely for you in reports in your analytics. So the type of data that is collected, it's anonymous and it's aggregated data. So you won't know if Tony visited your website or if Greg came to your website. There's no, and that also means there's no personally identifiable information or PII. So things like name, email address, phone number, actual address, that kind of thing. So and then, the type of things you'll see when you look at your reports, you can see things like what traffic sources people use to get to your site, maybe the devices they use, what pages they viewed. If you have an e-commerce site, you might, you'll be able to see the revenue and the transactions, top products, and then you can see things like visitor movement from page to page. But one thing that I think is even more important than what is measured is what's not measured. And people don't necessarily know this, and I should say by default. So just out of the box, there's a lot of things that aren't measured that are kind of important. So some of those include video interactions. So if you have YouTube on your site or any, Vimeo videos, none of that is measured. File downloads, button clicks, any kind of goal conversion, campaign visits, none of this stuff is measured by default. And these are important things that we might need to measure as marketers. The good news is that you can measure all these things. It just takes a little more setup. So the way to set some of that stuff up is here in the right. We're not going to go into detail on this, but I wanted you to be aware. So say you want to set up goal conversions. Well, that just takes some tweaking in the GA interface. If you want to track campaign visits, you have to use what are called UTM campaign tags. And those are attached to the links that you share in email and social media and ads. And then there's a big group of things. If you want to track, say, video interactions, you need to create a tag in Google Tag Manager. Now, we're not going to go into Google Tag Manager today and how to use that. That's a whole other talk, but it can be a very important piece of your measurement stack, if you will. So here's where we start to, I think, get into the stuff that will help you understand how Google is trying to organize the data, which will help you find it quicker, the data that you need. So the first part of this is just kind of knowing at a high level how they organize things. So you've got accounts, properties, and views when you log into your admin screen. And think of this as like a family relationship. So left to right, account would be like your grandparents, property would be the parents, and then view is the children. Now, the really important piece of this, as we start diving down into actual reports, is the ABCs. So what do I mean by this? Well, there actually is some method to Google's madness with all these reports that they have. So the ABC reports, if you go into your left-hand menu here on any report, you'll see these three reports. If I zoom in on those, you'll see their acquisition, behavior, and conversions. Okay, but it's not totally clear what I'm going to find in each of those sections. So the way we can think about it, and this is how they organized it, but without really helping us out much. Think of your sales funnel. So I'm going to use the ADA funnel, which probably many of you are familiar with. So it's a classic sales funnel: attention, top of funnel, interest, desire, and then action at the bottom of the funnel. Well, what you may or may not know, and Google doesn't tell you this, but they're actually trying to mimic the sales funnel in their reporting. So here's what I mean by that. So using this ADA model, we can map these stages of the ADA funnel to the category reports here in Google Analytics. So the awareness funnel will go to acquisition reports, interest and desire. You'll find those metrics and such in behavior, and then action is in conversions. So just at another high level questions in those same buckets of acquisition, behavior, conversions, the information that you can find out is, where did people come from? What are they doing? And how well are things working? So now that you kind of know this ABC structure, if you're paying attention, you'll see this everywhere. So this is just a channel report here. And across the top, we've got ABC. So here's acquisition, behavior, conversions. So these three columns are all metrics around top of funnel. These are things around more of the middle of the funnel. And then these are conversion information. So one of the important things we have to keep in mind as we're looking at all of our data is we want to know what success looks like. What does success look like on our website? That's pretty important thing to measure. We don't just want to know, where traffic came from. We want to know what is a successful visit. Well, we can ask Google Analytics, but they don't know. This is kind of what Google Analytics tells you. So we have to tell Google Analytics what success is for us. And the best way to do that is with goals. Now there's 4 types of goals that we can use. Destination, the top one here, is the one that probably most of you will get the most value from. And the way that works is setting up a destination that you want people to reach after they've done something that you want them to do. So in this example, I wanted somebody to sign up for a newsletter. Once they do, they go to a thank you newsletter page. And now I'm able to measure this. So I tell Google, hey, this is success on my site. You can give it a value. So I just gave it something greater than 0, so just 1. And now we're going to start to actually see this kind of success data in our reports. So if we look over at this last column, now we're going to see conversion and performance data. So this one here, this is measuring registrations, but now we see a conversion rate for these registration signups, and we see raw numbers. And then as we go down, we can map these to, so in this case, to a traffic source. So if we did not create a goal in GA, all of these columns would just be 0. So that's why you need to set up at least 1 goal on your site. And this really makes me sad when I look at people's goals in their analytics setup and I see this. This tells me they either didn't know how to set up their goal, didn't know they could, or they're just never going into their analytics. So make sure that you fill this in with at least 1 goal. So where do we start? We're ready to dig into analytics. We've got a little bit of background on how the data is organized, but we really need to address the big elephant in the room, which is probably why you're all here, and that is, it's really complex. So I want to kind of try to help you break it down into smaller pieces so that we can find what we're looking for and it won't be so painful. So before we reduce the pain, I want to amp it up a little bit. At the start, it looks simple. We've just got these 3 reports or categories reports, but the problem is when you start clicking into these, so then you get all of these, and then let's say I check out this behavior section. Well, then I get all of these. You can see that I can hear your or see your head spinning through the screen. And so basically, you know, we go from 3 reports to over 100. So that's why people don't like using Google Analytics, especially if you're not left-brained and analytically minded. You probably feel like this. So let's try to make this feeling go away. So we know that there's hundreds of reports, but the dirty little secret and the thing that I want you to remember is you really only need about 20%, and that number might be too high. So I just want you to take away that you don't need most of the reports. So forget about FOMO when it comes to Google Analytics. Most of those reports you don't need. Now, if you're a giant company like Amazon or, you know, Google themselves, you know, maybe a Fortune 50 company, you might need the majority of the reports in here, but you probably have a team of analysts and resources to just grind through all this data, but you don't probably have the team or the need for most of this. So just keep that in mind. But then the big question is, which reports? So let's try to tackle that one here. And, you know, the goal is trying to make this simpler for you. So it goes back to this. Let's start with the fact that it's a tool to help you answer your questions. So what I want you to do, well, just more questions. Who, what, where, when, hi. These are the things it can answer. We kind of went over this, you know, it's all related to your website. But what I want you to do before you even open your analytics, kind of prime the pump, if you will, what I want you to do is make a list of business questions that you want to answer. Now, I know this might sound a little rudimentary, but it's kind of the same way when you ask somebody if they have a content strategy that they've written out, and most people don't. So in a similar vein, I want you to have a measurement strategy, and it can be just as simple as, I want to answer these business questions. So make a list of questions, and that is going to help you because it should give you a laser-like focus. So you only want to answer these, 3 to 5 questions. We're going to ignore everything else. By ignoring everything else, that's going to reduce the complexity of GA, and hopefully that'll lead to less stress. So start brainstorming those questions, and maybe you may already know. Just to give you some specific ones you can answer to kind of give you an idea. And I've lined these up with each of the ABC buckets, which again correspond to the stages of the funnel. So top of funnel, we want to know, or we might want to know, which traffic sources are bringing the most traffic. That's pretty straightforward. If you do a lot of email, you might want to know, how is email performing, and maybe which emails. If you have a lot of partnerships, referral sites could be important. In the behavior category, it's things like, what content visitors view the most. That's going to be especially important for, all you companies that are creating a ton of content, trying to get people to your site organically. You might want to know what the top landing pages are and how people move through your site. What's the UX experience like? And then conversions, this is your bottom of the funnel. Which traffic sources convert the best, and maybe which campaigns bring us the most new leads. So just some more specific examples. I know a lot of you might be providing B2B services, so your goal of your website is probably leads. That's probably one of the big goals, and those can come in the form of somebody downloading a case study, maybe requesting a demo, scheduling an appointment. So your questions that you might want to answer with GA are, it could be which traffic sources convert the best to leads, or maybe which campaigns drive the most leads. Another example is if you have like an e-commerce site. Obviously there, your goal is sales. This is a little more B2C versus B2B. So you may want to know, again, which traffic sources lead to the most sales, which products are bringing in the most revenue, and then maybe are you getting more sales from mobile or desktop? So those are some ideas of questions that could be on your list. Now, the next thing we want to use is this idea of the 80-20 principle. So the Pareto principle, I believe it's also called. The idea that 80% of your outputs come from 20% of your inputs. So we want to use that a couple ways when we're talking about using Google Analytics. So the first way is just with reducing all of these reports. So we know we have hundreds of reports. Well, we want to use this 80-20 to figure out which handful of our reports have the answers that we're looking for, so that we can go from 100 plus reports down to, I'll just say 5. So then we need to know, where do we find the reports with the answers we need? So we're going to use some of the things that we already talked about. So the first thing is, what's the funnel stage of the question you asked? So if you want to know how your email is performing, is email sending, how is it performing, the last 6 months? Well, that's a top of funnel question. So what we'll do then is map that top of funnel part to the corresponding ABC category report. So in the case of an email related question, that would probably be in the acquisition report, because that's the top of funnel stuff. So I'm going to give you some reports today to get you started. Now, I'm going to give you some reports from each of those funnel stages, but these are ones that I think everyone can use. Now, you can probably use more, but again, most of the reports you're going to ignore. I can't give you a hard number, but you probably don't need to look at more than 10 reports ever. But if you start with just these 5, it'll cover 80% of what you need, roughly. So in the top of funnel, in the acquisition section, we've got the channels report. And this is how you find that. It's acquisition, all traffic channels. And this is giving you, these are the biggest buckets of your traffic sources. So things like all organic search, referral, that's all websites that link to your site. And then we've got like all social media. I don't see it in this example, but you might see paid ads, display, and then here you've got email. We may need to, or we probably do need to at some point drill down one level more. And this gives me the second report that I really love, and that is the source medium report. So now instead of just seeing organic search, I see Google organic, I see Bing organic, here's Yahoo, and then so referrals, those are the linking websites. So I've got LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and so this is just one level down, showing us traffic that's coming to our website and where it's coming from. The third report that I love, this is kind of middle of the funnel. So this is a behavior report. It's site content, all pages. So this is your content and who's consuming it. Not who, but which pages are getting consumed the most. So if you're a blog creator or maybe like a news items, you're probably going to be super interested in this report. Another one in the behavior section is the site content landing pages. And in this context, a landing page, it's just simply where somebody entered your site. I'm not super happy that Google calls this landing page, because I know many marketers, we hear landing page, we think of like a separate isolated page that we created, for like signups or something. And it might never link to your website. Now we can track it in Google Analytics, but this should probably be called entrances, would probably be a better name, but it's called landing pages. And what you need to know is it's just where people entered. And this is the first place that they experience your website each time they come and visit. Now, if you're not familiar, you see this slash here, this backslash in the number 1 row, that's your home page. So it's very common for that to have a high percentage of the landing pages. So it's kind of hard to see, but this is 44% of people started on the home page. So, but we've also got, I think in this example, here's a careers page, and then I see a bunch of job listings. So people that are coming here, at least these people, are really interested in getting jobs. And then the last report that I recommend is conversions and just the overview report. And this will show you can choose your conversion here, which one you want to look at. Hopefully you have more than one, but if you at least have one. So here's our registrations again. You can get a raw number. You can get a conversion rate. And then this could be important too, especially if you're running time-bound campaigns. You can see over time how your campaigns are, if they're driving registrations. So those are 5 reports that you can use. And like I said, you probably will use more, but those are 5 that I think everyone can use. And they cover the entire funnel. So if you're not sure where to start when you're looking at data and analytics, I would say start with these 5 reports. Now, the next step is you've got some reports you're looking at, but you want to try to find the real insights. Well, you need to use a thing called segments to do that. So why is that? Well, first of all, what is a segment? Segment, it's just a subset of a larger group. So you've got this audience on the left. It's everybody that's visiting your website. They have different expectations. They come from different traffic sources. They might have different profiles, whatnot. And you want to know what each of these different groups is. So each of these think of as a segment. So these are important because, like I said, your website, it's just a jumbled mix of traffic sources, visitor behavior, and expectations or desired outcomes, like why they came to your site. And then separating all of this data into segments is the only way to get those meaningful insights that'll help your marketing. To put it more bluntly, all data in aggregate is crap. So that's not my quote. That's Avinash Kushik. If you're familiar, if you follow any kind of analytics over the years, he's been one of the pioneers for probably about 20 years. I think he used to work for Google. I don't know if he's still there, but yeah, he does not hide his opinion. And so when you're not using segments, you're looking at aggregated data. So we need to dig deeper. We need to dig down into our data, get out of that aggregated stuff. And the way that we can do that, so these are just some examples of segments. So on the left here, these are some system, that's what Google calls them, but they're really just default segments. They're there, they're pre-made, you can just click them. So that's things like, oh, I want to see visitors that came in from organic traffic, or maybe paid traffic, or mobile, or just new users. And then on the right, here's some examples of segments you can use, but these are custom, meaning you need to create these. So you might be interested in just your email traffic. Or if you create a lot of blog content, maybe you just want to see people that view at least one blog post. How are they different than everyone else? So when you're thinking about using these segments, what you need to do is, in any report, this is how you can add it. So you click on this little gray area above the time graph. It says add a segment. And then here are those two options. So here's the system, and you can choose from any of these. I think there's about 20 of these. Like I said, you can also create a segment by clicking this big red button. And those segments that you create, they can be really elaborate. It's just kind of limited really by your imagination and how far you want to drill down into your data. But when you do apply a segment, so I'm going to apply this, this mobile traffic segment. And what we'll see here is you see the segment listed up here now. And then you'll see, you know, when we're looking at the line graph, you'll see a separate line. So this is our mobile traffic. This line is all of our traffic. And then when you're looking at your table, you'll also see segmented data here. So this row is all of our mobile traffic. Again, down here, we see it. So we're starting to see a difference in performance. And then so like, let me find a point here. So like just in conversion rate. So mobile traffic in this case converts at 0.3%, but all users is a little lower. It's like 0.1. So that we might want to dig even deeper and maybe compare mobile to desktop and see what's happening there. And you can do multiple segments. So here I've got 3. You can do up to 4 at any one time. But here I'm just looking at, this is a report using, these are device categories. So desktop, mobile, tablet. And just kind of quickly, when I'm looking at some of this data, well, I see that most of the conversions, or this is e-commerce, most of the purchases are coming in on desktop. And then we see that conversion rate is almost double mobile. So we may want to see, why do we think that is? You know, is there something wrong with the mobile experience? Maybe people just, they're not in the right frame of mind to buy yet. But that's what digging down into segments can help us see. So I think Alec Baldwin said it best when he said, always be segmenting. That's an old reference. I probably just showed my age, but I like that one anyway. Now, this is strictly a time saver here. This is for if you're only going into Google Analytics like once or twice, maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. you might forget where these reports are. I'm trying to help you remember, but you may know what you want to look up, but you can't remember where it is among all those hundreds of reports. So I want to give you a little, I guess this is kind of a hack, but it can be super useful for people that aren't in analytics much. And what you do is you save your reports. So it's called saved reports. It's basically like a bookmark that allows you to keep your top reports in one place. So the way to do this is in any report, you can come up here to this little bar. There's a like a floppy disk icon. They really should update this. So you click on that save button, and then you can give that report a meaningful name so you can kind of identify it in a list. And then that's it. And now it shows up in your saved report. So imagine that these 5 reports are the only ones that I'm interested. I don't care about the other hundreds of reports. So you could save all of your reports right here. And then when you come in, all you got to remember is to go to saved reports. And then you've got, so then look at this one, click back to save reports, and then just kind of go down the line. So that's kind of a hack to store them all in one place. Now, you may have to try to save time and quickly get insights, you might need to use a spreadsheet, especially if you want to do any kinds of calculations. And these don't even have to be complex calculations, because Google Analytics it doesn't do any, it shows you the data, it gives you the data, but it doesn't do calculations. So if you need to do any kind of calculations, you might have to export your data into a spreadsheet. So that's similar. You come up here to the top, and right next to the save button, we see an export button. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on that, and then you can choose from 3 different spreadsheet options or PDF. I don't really know what good the PDF would do. But if you want to slice and dice your data, say you choose Excel, and the first time you do this, you're probably going to get something like this. And so if you see here, there's just 10 rows of data. And you know that there was way more than that in your report. So what is going on? Well, down here in the lower right, here is the problem. I'm going to zoom in on this. Well, I'll keep this here for now. Google, when you do an export, it only lets you export what is on the page. So since we have 10 rows of data on the page, it gives you 10 rows. So what you need to do is change this setting. So let me zoom in on this. So right now, see how it's set to 10 rows? So that's all we're going to get. And we see that there's 713 rows of data. So to get that, we just need to change this setting right here. So we want the show rows setting. I just max it out. Like don't even mess around. I max it out to 5,000. And then we'll get all of the rows of data that we're looking for. So then you can go, you've got it all in Excel, Google Sheets, wherever you do your number crunching, and you can do your analysis there. There may be a lot of you that don't ever want to go into analytics. Maybe you go in once and you were like, nope, never again. Now you may know what you want to measure. So what you can do is you can set up any report to be emailed to you automatically on a regular basis, or members of your team, or maybe partners if you're working with people outside, if you're working with consultants or an agency. So this can be a total time saver because you don't have to go into Google Analytics at all other than the first time to set this up. So it's kind of, again, I don't know if this naming is great, but in any report, you can find this share. And so when you click on that, you get a box that looks like this. It's pretty straightforward. You just put the email addresses in you want to send it to, give it a meaningful name. Like this is the default one, but you can change it if, this is too generic. Probably the most important thing for you to do here is in this pull down is choose the frequency. So if you leave it at once, it'll send the report right now. but I'm assuming that you don't want to go in here very often. So say you want weekly reports, you can just choose weekly, and then you'll be able to choose the day of the week that you will get that report. So if you want it every Monday morning, you can set that up. So if you choose weekly, you'll get a week's worth of data. If you choose monthly, you get the previous month, and you get the idea. And then I would say in here, give it a nice little message telling people what it is. And then the other thing too is I would sign your name, because whoever gets this will see this box. But what they don't see is they don't see your name in the address, the from address. It just says like Google Analytics or from Google. And so hopefully you've informed them that you're going to be sending them weekly reports. So when they do click in, they'll see this message and they'll be like, oh, right, this was that thing that Kyle or Greg or Tony sent me. And then once you hit send, it'll schedule the report. So this feature is for people that just rarely want to go into analytics, but they want a couple specific reports sent to them. I want to give you just a quick example. We'll do a top of funnel analysis that kind of takes us through some of this process. So let's just say, so we're going to start with a question, right? Then that might be, which blog posts get the most organic traffic? So that's a pretty good question, especially if you're creating a lot of content. So this one the question has a segment built into it. We want to know organic traffic. So we have to isolate that. We're going to add the organic traffic segment here. We're going to use the 80-20 principle to only identify the top 3 to 5 posts, and that's pretty normal. So you might not be able to see these little gray numbers here, but these 3 posts have the highest percentage of organic visits. So this one is almost 20%, this is 11%, this is 11%, and then it's kind of a long tail. So I'm going to just say, I want to just focus on these 3. These are kind of my top, these are my top posts. These are the ones that get eyeballs to my site. So how can I leverage that? Well, you want to link to your highest converting pages with your best calls to action. So you've got a lot of eyeballs on those 3 posts. Get them to your highest value call to action. You can also test relevant lead magnet forms right on a page, or any kind of, sign up for a demo or something. I think Greg and I actually did this for a Windbound client a couple of years ago. We put a form right in the top blog posts, and we got a ton of signups right there. So that can be something to test. Also, you want to share those 3 to 5 posts, the ones that get the most traffic organically. You want to share them in social media regularly, because if they're popular in organic search, they're probably going to be popular in social too. So take those posts and share them across your networks. So to recap, here's kind of the framework we went through. So it all starts with knowing the questions that you want answered. I know it sounds simple, but I run into people all the time that don't do it. And then they run into the shiny object syndrome once they go into GA. So come up with a list of questions you want to answer. Remember how Google organizes the reports. ABC, that maps to our sales funnel. And then when you go to look for those answers, we're basically using the 80-20 rule to go from 100 plus reports down to say 10-ish. And then we're going to map the questions we want to answer. What part of the funnel is that question related to? We're going to map that to the category report that matches it. Then we're going to drill down in that report into our specific segments. So we're not looking at aggregated data. And then here's some real-time savers. Save those reports if you want, all in one spot, so you can quickly find them later. And then the final part, if you need to slice and dice data in a spreadsheet, you can export it Because like I said, you can't do calculations in Google Analytics. And then email yourself the report, email your team members. Then the only time you need to go in is to set this up, and you can probably set it and forget it. If that's, if you don't have time or you don't have resources on your team to actively be exploring your data, then just make sure that you're sending yourself the key reports every week, every month, etc. So my final thoughts on all of this are, when you're using analytics, measure what matters, and that's finding the answers to your business questions. And then again, this should be obvious, but take action on your findings. So change your marketing, or better yet, if you find something that's working, keep doing what's working, do less of what's not working, and fix anything that's broken. So thank you. That's my talk for today. I'm happy to take questions if you guys have them on anything Google Analytics or measurement related. You can just, I guess, drop it in the chat. I have a newsletter if you are inclined to learn more about measurement. It's bite-sized measurement tips for busy marketers like you who don't want to be analytics experts. And I totally get that. I think Greg even wrote a post about right brain marketers. So if you're interested in that, you can go to kyleakerman.com newsletter. And I want to connect with you because I love hanging out with marketing peeps. So find me on LinkedIn. So Tony, do you think we have time for questions or anything?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Kyle, that was fantastic. Thanks so much. I think that really, somebody had mentioned that, Kara mentioned it was broken down really well. I would say I would feel comfortable using this recording and sharing it with someone as almost as an overview / training. Like, here,
okay,
go watch this, because I mean, there's tons of Google Analytics stuff out there, but it's so detailed or it's so high level that you're not really getting what you need. But this was, I think, kind of right where it needed to be.
That's perfect. And that's a challenge I have too, trying to teach people this stuff is how tactical and in-depth do you get? So I didn't really go into a ton of that stuff because I don't think that's where a lot of this audience is. Like, I don't think they're ready for it yet.
Yeah, right. I think what you want out of it sometimes just depends, right? It depends on what your organization wants, what your VP of marketing needs, or what your leadership wants. So we got a question here. Got a couple of questions here. Yeah. So Randy says, do you think there are additional benefits to using Google Data Studio? Like, so what is that, right? Because it's like, is that the next step? I've looked at it. I don't even know where to start with.
Yeah,
Google
so
Data Studio.
That's a great question. So people that are unfamiliar, Google Data Studio is basically Google's data visualization tool. Because Google Analytics itself is not great at presenting data. So it is there. It's a free tool. It, as you can imagine, it easily connects with other Google products. You can pull in data from almost any kind of source, and then visualize it. I'm talking about making pretty graphs, adding filters, making it more usable to actually do analysis in the Data Studio interface or environment versus trying to do it in Google Analytics. So it's a great add-on. So Google Analytics collects the data, and then you can send it to Data Studio to visualize it and make it more digestible for your internal team, your external partners, clients, that kind of thing. But yes, I use it every day. It has a little bit of a learning curve to it, but it's a great tool to try and learn at least the basics about. So yeah, I definitely use it.
Fantastic. By the way, audience, feel free to just unmute and ask a question. So chime in. We're not on webinar, right? Well, we can all just unmute and ask your question. So it looks like Shelly had a question here about recapping about analytics and adding to your site. Shelly, are you still with us here? If you want to unmute or ask your question, we can do that. Start it up that way. And I can just ask it here.
That's fine.
Next one, just prep people. So, so how to, recap a bit about how to add the code. And I have a follow-up question to this. How to add the analytics code to your site.
Yeah. So there's basically 3 ways. You can use what, if you're not familiar, there's a thing called Google Tag Manager, which,
yes.
And you probably don't even know there's other tag manager products. And what a tag manager is basically is a container that will implement marketing code to your website. So think of it as just one location to put all your different marketing code that you want to implement, so you don't have to go to a developer every time you want to add something, because we know that they're busy. And, so a perfect example is if you want to run Google ads or Facebook ads, there's the Facebook pixel that you have to add. Well, in Tag Manager, you can just create a little tag and then it pushes it to your website. You don't even need the developer. But if you don't have a Tag Manager, then you got to go to your developer, you got to give him the code, which you would, in this case, get from Facebook. And then he has to, when he has time, put it on the pages of your website. So Google Analytics itself is just a tag that Tag Manager can implement. So I know that can be a little confusing. Sometimes people think they're like competing products or that they're the same. You use Tag Manager to implement analytics. So that's the preferred way of doing it, I think, because it sets you up for future success. Because, like I said, if you want to add, if you want to run CPC ads, you want to run Facebook ads, if you want to add tools like, I don't know, Hotjar or Optimizely or anything like that, you can very easily do it in Google Tag Manager. So, the other way to do it too is if you have a WordPress site, there's a lot of plugins you can look up that will just add the code. And the way it does it is you basically just give it that after you registered. So it was like UA dash and then a string of numbers. So these plugins will just ask you for, give us your Google Analytics account number, and then you enter it and then it'll push it to your site. So that's a WordPress specific solution. But if anybody has questions about implementing this stuff, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and I can help you get it set up.
Yeah, I've been a big time +1 or upvote Google Tag Manager. I would say if you have more than one piece of a snippet of code other than Google Tag Manager, other than Google Analytics, you need to be using Google Tag Manager. For instance, like think about all the code that you could have on your site.
Yeah.
LinkedIn Insight Tag, Facebook Pixel, Google Analytics, live person chat pop-up box. I don't know. Anybody name anything else? How many pieces of code do you have in your, do we have running on our site? Right. I just kind of started taking over the AMA Madison site as far as the Google Analytics. I'm not taking it over, but I'm like, I went in there and I first got in there was this loose LinkedIn code, Facebook and Google Tag Manager, and it was competing. And so it'll help your site load faster and help you know where stuff is, because who has a custom WordPress template? A lot of people do. And where does the code go on a custom template?
Yeah.
A lot of different places. So anyway, that's a whole nother, Kyle, you want to do a Google Tag Manager talk?
I could. It gets really technical though, but maybe there's a way to simplify it. I want to add one more remark. If you do try to add Google Analytics through Tag Manager, just be careful that you also at the same time remove a hard-coded version of it that might be on your site. So if you're starting with the hard code and you decide that you want to go to Tag Manager, you have to remove that initial code also. Because what happens is if you leave both of those running, you're basically running 2 versions of Google Analytics and you're double counting everything. So all of your page views will just all of a sudden spike the day you add that Tag Manager version of it. So be very careful when you do switch over to Tag Manager.
Fantastic. Somebody had a question on how much time investment would it be for a Google Analytics novice to learn Google Analytics and earn a certificate, Google Analytics certificate?
That's a tough one. I mean, I'm trying to remember. I haven't looked at their training in a while. I know they have a lot of free videos that they offer. And I think if you do all of the videos, man, I did it a couple of years ago. I want to say it probably comes up to strictly in hours. If you're just counting the hours of the videos to watch them all, I want to say it was at least 10 to 30 hours. That's just to watch the videos. That's a good place to start. I have not taken their exam in a long time, so I don't even know what the current state of the exam is. But I would say a lot of it depends on. When it comes to my learning any digital marketing skill, I kind of try to use the just-in-time learning. So the next thing I want to learn is something that will really help me versus a nice to have thing. So now I would lump Google Analytics in the, it will help you right now. I guess it just depends how much time you can allot. But yeah, that's a tough one to answer because everybody learns at a different pace, right? And if you want to, I could send out a bunch of different sites that have great courses on all things digital marketing, whether it's analytics, I don't know, SEO, email, content strategies, paid ad strategies. I've taken tons of classes from different sites, and I can help you or give you recommendations of sites that if you want to invest a little money, the Google training is free, but if you're really serious and you have the means to spend some money on classes, there's some really great classes out there.
My personal experience is, this is Google changes Google Analytics all the time. Like stuff moves around, right? So this is not a skill you're going to just like take a course and then learn. It's one of those things you have to kind of just dig in, and then I am not an expert by any means, but I have learned a lot just by doing, right? And so I had my, if you have your own website, put Google Analytics on it and just play. Cool thing about volunteering with the organization, this is kind of a cool sandbox to do this in. So nobody here at the chapter really kind of digs into it. So if you are if you're in the AMA or Madison area, call me or email me, and we'd love to talk about if you want to just like practice in a safe space. If you, reach out to a local nonprofit and say, I want to, help you with this part of your marketing, and again, play with it that way. That with real data. So that was my experience.
Yep, I did all of it.
Yeah, it's so complicated that, and without real life data, I think you're going to learn more with real life data, and right. Doing it with your own website or somebody else's real data.
And
that you're helping
I don't
out.
know if you guys are aware, there's actually, it took them a long time to do this, but Google they have a demo site that anyone can access. A demo Google Analytics account. If you just go to, if you just Google, analytics demo site, the link will come up, and I think you just need to have a Gmail address, and you can access it. So if you have no other data set to look at, if you don't have your own website, if you're not volunteering with a nonprofit or or whatnot, you can use the one that Google provides, and you can't break it. Like they've put in, it's to their merchandise store. So you'll even get to see like e-commerce data, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's another way to kind of start exploring with the tool.
Kyle, Shelly had a question here. Okay, here's a good one, right?
Yeah.
How do we analyze what's going on our competitor's site, right? We can't install our code, our Google Analytics code on there. So are there some tools to kind of figure out what's going on our
there's
lookalikes?
You can't see that I know of. You can't see their data. There are tools to see what tags they're running. So if you're curious, so there's like one tool that I love, not for competitive research, but just for when I start working with new clients, there's a tool called Built With. So it's one word, but built, BUILT, with, what is the site built with? So you enter in the URL, and then it'll tell you everything they're running on their site. So it'll show you analytics. It'll show you, not their analytics data, but it'll say like Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager. If they're running, Facebook ads, if they're running, so you can see at least maybe how they're trying to market. But now there might be, I'm not looking for them actively, so I don't know if they exist. There could be tools that allow you to kind of scrape some things, but I don't deal with that kind of stuff. I think you start getting into a very shady area, especially with data privacy. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for seeing what happens on your competitor's site.
Kyle, okay, so here, the space I'm in is I work with a lot of nonprofits who have a lot of annual events or regional events. And so we might be using Squarespace or WordPress or something like that.
Yep.
So cool. I can put Google Analytics on that. However, we might be using a registration software like Cvent or something like that. So when you, so the registration process to go from, you might start out on a landing page, right?
Yep.
AMA Madison /2021 conference, right? You land there and then you pick up a cookie maybe or something like that. And then we say register now. Then we send you over to a separate service where I may not be able to put a snippet of code, Google Analytics code, right? So now I go over there and I go through 3 different steps. I create an account. I put in my address, and then at the end, it spits me out on a thank you page, a confirmation page.
Right.
And then maybe I can get them over to my own page. So this is where I really struggle with Google goals, Google Analytics goals of tracking when the visitor is going other places other than my own property. Do you have any advice for me on that?
Yeah, that is one of their biggest issues. So, and you kind of touched on some of the big problems. So if you're working with a third-party platform, to be able to get the best data, and what I mean by that is you want it to look like one visit, right? So if somebody comes to your site and then they register and then they go to the registration site, you don't want that to show up as 2 visits or like an exit or something. So the only way to kind of merge that data, make it look like one site, is that third-party platform either has to have some kind of integration built in, so, and if they do, they usually they'll say like, hey, give us your account ID and we've got it fixed, supposedly. Or they have to allow you to edit code on your page that lives on their platform. So if they let you edit the code, you can put Google Tag Manager in there with your Google Analytics, and then there's just some tweaks you need to do to make sure the cross domain is set up correctly. So if people move back and forth between the 2 sites, it'll just be one seamless visit. Now the problem you said is if they don't let you edit the code, you're kind of screwed. There's really no, you just need to know that it's a hole in the data. Now, the best thing you could do in that case is hopefully you can redirect them to a thank you page on your site.
Mm-hmm.
So at least it's not perfect, but at least you can get the raw number of signups on your site, but you're losing the attribution or the source of the traffic. It's all going to show up probably as direct traffic because it came from that other platform. So I guess I should say sometimes it shows up as direct, sometimes it'll show up as coming from Cvent. So it doesn't help you a ton, especially if you were running, say, Facebook campaigns to try to get that sign up. But
right.
Yeah, you're kind of stuck if they don't have an integration, or if they don't let you add code. And honestly, that's one of the first things that I research those two things with every third platform I have to deal with. I'll just start Googling, I don't know, Cvent integration with Google Analytics, or I'll look for tag manager recipes. Maybe somebody built one that connects them. So yeah, it can start to get a little technical. And sometimes you just have to live with the data you get, even if it's not perfect. So I know that's probably not the answer you were hoping for.
I just want to make, it's one of those, it is what it is. As long as I know that I'm not missing anything obvious, then it's, like I said, I'll have to just kind of live with it. So what other questions do we have out there as we're kind of wrapping up? Anybody else have anything?
I can ask a question. If you guys really want to have your mind blown, have you heard of Google Analytics 4? Does that ring a bell, Tony? Have you heard that? Or nope. GA4? Or maybe you heard about Google Analytics App plus Web?
Oh, Scott Mueller says yes.
Okay, so you think all of this is difficult. Google Analytics 4 is a brand new platform of Google Analytics. And it's out of beta now. So I think everyone can set it up, but it's still under heavy development. It's a completely different data model. And what I mean by that is how it collects data. It's event driven. So that basically means anything you do on a website can be logged as an event, versus like sessions and page views. So it's based on their mobile platform. They have a thing called Firebase. That was their analytics just for mobile apps, but now they've extended it to add in web properties. So the big takeaway is it's a completely different form of Google Analytics. You don't need to start using it. It won't be ready for prime time for probably 6 months to a year, maybe longer. You can keep using your old data, and should, because it's not a direct one-to-one mapping. You can't merge the data. So that's a very important point, because they measure things differently. So you can't connect the data in any meaningful way. And then that brings to the final point. Since you can't do that, since you can't merge it, the biggest recommendation now is to set up Google Analytics 4, but in a parallel, you'll be tracking in parallel. So you'll basically be running your existing analytics, and then this Google Analytics 4, the data goes to two different properties. So, don't worry about, you're not going to mess up your existing data. But start collecting data now in GA4. So a year from now or longer, when you're ready to actually cut over, you'll have all of that data. Because otherwise, if you wait till like 12 months from now, then you won't have any historical data on that platform. So I can send you, maybe Tony, maybe after this, I can email you. I kind of have a little email template with a bunch of bullet points that I've been collecting that I could send to you and you could send out to the group.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have a follow-up blog. And maybe
cool.
we can link to that or have a little
it's super new, but people are just starting to hear about it now. It used to be called Google. For about 6 months it was called Google Analytics App Plus Web, and they realized that was too clunky, so they just call it GA4 because it's the 4th iteration of Google Analytics. And it's the biggest change in like 15 years, so it's huge. But people are still trying to figure it out.
Got it. Okay. Well, one last question here.
Yeah, let's do it.
This is a good one here. And I don't see why not. Let's see. I'm going to say yes, but I'm not the expert. I'm going to just say yes, Leanne. But we'll see what Kyle has to say. Can you use GA on I'm shorthand, GA3 on an internal site like SharePoint?
I am not sure. An internal site. An
intranet site, right?
Yeah, you should be able to, because basically you just need. It has to be what allows you to measure things is that you can put the GA code on that thing. So if you can put the snippet of code on that internal page, then yeah, you should be able to measure it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So Leanne, here's the hard part. Convincing your IT person to let you put the code there. That's probably the hardest part.
They're probably going to want to do it themselves. And now that you mention it, I have seen some internal data or people have set up like internal pages. So yeah, you should be able to do it, I think.
Great, thanks.
I'm not that familiar with SharePoint, but if there's other code on that page, that executes things, you should be able to do it.
Excellent.
And Leanne, if you do it, and let us know how it works for you.
Please.
Vince says it has to be able to run JavaScript. It won't track PDF views unless you track the click within Google Tag Manager.
That's a great point. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, now I've had good luck with so Google Tag Manager has some advanced Google Analytics tracking that will extend your trackability, for lack of a better thing, within Google Analytics that you normally can't do, like clicks and events, right? So that's another reason to use Google Tag Manager.
Yeah, all of that. That I think I did a slide earlier on that showed the things that aren't measured by default. So a lot of those things, if you want to measure them, they require a setup within Tag Manager. So that's things like measuring videos, like plays and pause and that kind of thing, clicks on buttons, form submissions. What else? E-commerce a lot of times can be implemented through Tag Manager. But yeah, all those additional scrolls, sometimes you might want to measure how far somebody scrolls down a page. Downloads, all of that stuff requires additional tracking, which you can do in Tag Manager.
Fantastic. I found I've really good luck with digitalmarketer.com.
Yeah, they're good. They're a good source.
Really good step-by-step screenshots for setup. And there's like a 101 and then an advanced version of that. And they always keep it updated. So that's where I learned Google Tag Manager was just kind of this, 25-page printout going through. Yeah.
It's just another thing. It's like how, you're trying to develop your skills and, how we all need to have a little bit of technical knowledge, but it's like how much is necessary for you to learn to do your job better, right? Like if you knew enough Tag Manager to be dangerous, go learn it. Do you need to learn JavaScript? Probably not right now, but it's, but you need to be able to make those decisions. But yeah, I'm a big fan of learning, continuous learning.
I don't know where everybody else is at, but just attempting to learn Google analytics and tag manager and trying to learn more and make decisions like that has kind of made me don't tell anybody at my company, but they all think I'm a genius and I'm not. But for the fact that I've gone that, I think it's going to elevate your status. Like you will be the hero.
It definitely can. Yeah.
If just by applying that, because it is kind of this mystery, right? It is this hard thing. It's got learning curve. If you learn Google Tag Manager and you learn, just get into it, it's definitely going to elevate your status and kind of put you in the higher level of MarTech type of folks out there.
And I think that all marketers, whether you're more towards the creative side or if you're more towards the analytics, I mean, we all need to have some amount of analytics skill set in our toolkit. And then it's kind of up to you to decide how deep you want to go. But I don't think that you'll go far if anytime you need to measure anything and you just throw your hands in the air and you're like, I don't know how to do that. That's somebody else's job. Like there are younger marketers coming up now that they know all about measurement and they're on top of it. So I think we all need it the same way we all need to be able to write a little bit. Like I don't need to be able to crank out blog posts continuously, but I need to be able to coherently express myself in text. So that's kind of how I think about analytics too. Like you don't need to be an expert, but you should be able to go around in analytics, maybe tag manager, and do some of the basics. So that's just
and learning the basics, like I said, seriously is above and beyond what you're at. Don't get imposter syndrome. Like this will definitely elevate you. Like I've learned this. And so now I'm going to be probably stepping into some different roles at my own company.
Yeah.
And so we're looking for people that kind of will step in and do what I'm doing. And so we're looking at this and you obviously you want somebody who is well-rounded and can do a little social media and can do a little statistics and analysis and Google Analytics and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And having that on some, even as a little bit of experience is a big plus when I'm looking at resumes right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on like the size of the company, right? So say you're like, I don't know, 5 or 10 person company. Well, pretty much everybody is doing everything. So there you're almost forced, to know a little bit of everything. If you're at a large company, maybe a marketing agency or something, well, then you start to get specialists, right? Like, oh, he's the PPC guy or she's the social media manager or, that kind of thing, so, and then kind of the middle ground is for skill sets is kind of like, I'm sure you've heard the term like a T skill set, like a T marketer, where think the letter T. So you've got a broad depth of knowledge, breadth is the right word. I don't know. You know every little bit of digital marketing. You know a little bit to be dangerous, but then you go deep. So the vertical part of the T, you go deep in one area. So like I've chosen analytics as my part of the T, the vertical part, but I know all the other areas. I'm not an expert in them, but I know them enough to be dangerous. So that's one way to think about developing your skill set is, what do you want to go deep in?
Fantastic.
Well, that was really great. I really appreciated that. And I don't mean to cut off and interrupt, but while you're here, what's your take on the Salesforce integration world takeover, everything of Google and now Google Analytics on the Marketing Cloud?
I don't know if I have a good answer yet. I mean, I'm not affected by a lot of that stuff yet. And honestly, I don't work with a lot of companies that even use Salesforce. Because that's one of those tools that, so in the same way, so Google Analytics they have a paid product, GA360. That costs $150,000 a year. I don't work with anybody that uses that. In fact, I do have one, there's one client that's going to start using it, and Salesforce is kind of the same way. So I think a lot of it too depends on, where you're working and that kind of thing. But I don't really, I guess I don't have a good answer to your question.
No, just curious because you're right. I mean, it's only attainable by certain, group of people exclusively at this point. And the more I see it, the more you're not becoming, that deep learner into, like, if you're into analytics, everything's now out of the box and you can just, have everything integrated and everything works for you, automated already. That's another automation, so, which we don't even have to know Google Analytics by that time if you're like in that space.
Where it gets tricky is what are those automated tools providing you? Like if they're just spitting numbers back at you, like so that guy Avinash, he just calls that a data puke. So the data doesn't really, if there's no analysis with it, meaningful analysis, how valuable is the tool? Like I've seen automated tools that for years that just kind of scrape like your traffic report, and it says, here's the organic traffic you had, and it's 10% higher than last week. I'm like, okay, does that really help me? Like I need to dig deeper, and the tools don't really do that. So you still need to use your brain power, and I think that's where we can find value, is to develop your skills in asking the right questions, and then figuring out, do I have the data that I need to get the answer? And if not, how can I get it? But a lot of it starts with the right questions. Like we didn't really go into analysis much today, but doing good analysis starts with asking good questions.
Whew. That was a lot. It's a good conversation.
Yeah, great stuff, Kyle. Thanks.
I can geek out on this all day, so I don't want to hold everybody up. I'm sure everybody's left by now.
No,
actually, you got just a little less than half the people have stayed on.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty awesome.
I'm glad people are still hanging around.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us here. I think we'll wrap this up. Kyle, are we going to be able to send out your slides?
Yeah, we'll have to work with me offline so I can get them to you. The best way to get them to you. I'm not perfect. I don't know how to send huge files, so
we'll
get your slides. Me with that part.
I just want to, make sure we have permission. So we'll get your slides from you. Yep, we recorded this. We're all volunteers, so within a week or so, we'll send out an email to all the registrants and attendees to let you watch this again, or if you're watching this and you missed it, you missed a good one, but you're watching it now, so hello.
Yeah, I didn't mention to you that I occasionally help out the Chicago branch of AMA.
Excellent.
So like I have access to their analytics.
Oh, there we go. See.
Yep.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll get that sent out. Check out amamadison.org for our next couple events. We've got our signature speaker series, and then our other craft marketing coming up at the end of next month. So please do to check those out and register for those. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. This was fun.